And that is what I mean when I say the problem is almost never the pizza. I've been in rooms like this for 20 years. Different sizes, different continents. I want to tell you what I've never once seen in 20 years of walking into organizations that are struggling. I've never once walked in and purely found a talent problem. I've never walked in and purely found a shortage of smart people or good ideas or real ambition. What I find most times is a delivery problem. The pizza is there. The pizza is often extraordinary, but the boxes have run out. Now, some of you in this room are running organizations where you know exactly which box is running low. You knew it before you walked in here this morning. And some part of you is hoping that this talk was going to give you something new. A new framework, a new strategy, a new system you haven't tried yet. And we'll talk about all of that. I want to be honest with you. What I'm about to tell you is not new. It is not new because the fundamentals are never new. That is what makes them fundamental. Sleep is not a new idea. Financial margin is not a new idea. Following through on what you said you would do is not a new idea. And yet, the organizations that do these things consistently, reliably, under pressure, when it is inconvenient, when nobody's watching, those organizations are rare. Let me tell you about a man named Dick Fosbury. 1968 Mexico City Olympics. Fosbury wins the gold medal in the high jump, using a technique nobody had ever seen in competition. He went over the bar backwards, arching his back, landing on his neck. Everyone in the stadium thought he looked ridiculous. He set an Olympic record. Within a decade, nearly every elite high jumper in the world was using his method. People remember the innovation, the dramatic backward leap, the revolution. What people don't remember is what Fosbury was doing in the years before Mexico City, in empty gymnasiums with nobody watching. He was mastering the approach run. The 6 or 7 strides before the jump, the plant of the foot, the angle of attack on the bar. He understood that the flop itself, the visible, spectacular part, would never work consistently without a completely reliable, repeatable, boring approach. The approach was the box. The flop was the pizza. You cannot consistently deliver a revolutionary jump without a fundamentally sound approach. No amount of innovation at the bar compensates for chaos in the run-up. I think about that every time I walk into an organization that is chasing the next innovation, while their inventory system hasn't been looked at in 3 years. Every time I sit with a leadership team that wants to talk about culture, but their top 3 people can't tell me what the plan is when something goes wrong at 9 p.m. on a Friday. Every time I meet a leader who's exceptional on their best day and unreliable on a Tuesday. Here's a question I want you to sit with. Not answer, sit with. What fundamental in your organization is currently working so well that you have completely stopped paying attention to it? Your cash position? Your key supplier relationship? The person on your team whose institutional knowledge exists nowhere else except their own head? The communication habits that is holding your culture together without anyone having explicitly decided that it should. Whatever it is your pizza box. And right now, you are not thinking about it, which means you are probably not protecting it either. I want to tell you about something I call the empty pizza box mandate. Because this one, I guarantee it, is happening in your organization right now. And most of you have never had a name for it. It is the directive from your finance team, from a compliance requirement, from a cost-cutting initiative that came down from above that removes an operational buffer in the name of efficiency. Not out of malice. The people issuing it are doing their jobs correctly. They are optimizing a real and measurable variable. But the buffer they are removing is the only thing standing between your organization and the scenario that directive did not account for. I know this because I watched it happen on a boat anchored off the coast of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. A young maritime officer named Matt shipped out of Port Fourchon in Louisiana on what was supposed to be a 4-week voyage. Before the vessel departed, the captain provisioned the boat exactly as he should. Everything was accounted for. The boxes were full. Then, as they prepared to enter the port of Rio, the custom requirement arrived. Brazilian maritime law restricted certain food items from entering the country without inspection and clearance. The captain was not going to risk a fine. The order was given. The food was disposed of per regulations. The company had assured them resupply will be waiting in quarantine anchorage. It was not. For 5 days, 9 professional mariners sat anchored in view of one of the most beautiful cities in the world, eating spam and crackers. The Christ the Redeemer statue, visible from the deck every morning. The system that required the disposal of their food had not accounted for a 5-day delay. The regulation was designed for the expected scenario. The expected scenario was not the one that arrived. That is the empty pizza box mandate. Well-intentioned, properly issued, completely correct. Within the time, within the frame of reference it was used in. And they left the organization with nothing to absorb the unexpected. Matt is a boat pilot today. When he tells a story to other crews, he says they get it immediately. They have their own versions. The details differ, but the mechanism is always the same. What he took from that anchorage is simple. Make sure you never get low on certain things. Force the issue. Name what is at stake before the buffer is gone, rather than after. Be the person in the room who says, this system has no answer for the scenario it was not designed for. What is our plan when that scenario arrives? You cannot always prevent the mandate from being issued. You cannot always refuse to comply. But you can be the person in the room who insists on keeping something in the hold. Now, the second pattern I want to talk about, this one operates completely below the level of any system you have or any policy you have. It is something I call unconscious permission. And the reason I want to spend some time here is that most of the cultural problems I see in organizations, most of the accountability gaps, the standards that are quietly slipping, the behavior that everyone sees and no one addresses, none of it happened because someone decided to lower the bar. It happens because the bar was lowered without anyone deciding anything.